Hi, I'm Max Kaiser. This is the Kaiser Report here in London, celebrating unelected officials. Stacey Herbert, let's talk about this. God save the Queen. She's going to be on a big barge floating down the Seine.
The Seine, the Thames.
Oh, the Thames, exactly.
Yes, well, she is one of the longest-serving monarchs, technocrats, kleptocrats, and we have the unelected J.P. Morgan official of Tony Blair, who's been in the news this week. Leveson inquiry, press relations unhealthy, says Tony Blair. Well, the important part of this, of course, is that at one point during Tony Blair of J.P. Morgan's testimony to the Leveson inquiry, a protester had to be ejected after getting into the court and calling Mr. Blair a war criminal who had been paid off by J.P. Morgan for the Iraq War. Mr. Blair said on the record that there was no truth in the allegation.
Well, you know, the protesters are getting closer and closer. You know, these leaders have to look over their shoulder more and more, especially Blair, who, technically speaking, qualifies as a war criminal for the activities in Iraq, certainly. And his connection to J.P. Morgan, of course, the blood for oil that he denied was the case. That's been proven to be true. The oil deals he did after leaving number 10 show a clear connection, blood for oil. So the protester is quite accurate.
And of course, in terms of unelected officials, here's another story that Max and I have been covering while we've been here. Over here, bad debt banks should go bankrupt. So in Ireland, they're determining whether or not to vote yes for the European Fiscal Treaty, because voting yes, Max, is going to bring stability, like the stability that monarchs and Gaddafi and Mubarak and Ben Ali, these men brought stability. And here, voting yes for the fiscal treaty is going to bring stability. But bad debt banks should go bankrupt, according to Max Kaiser at an event in Dublin. He said if they are capitalists, they should obey the rules of capitalism. If you make a bad debt and screw up, then you've got to pay the consequences. You can't go to the government and get a bailout. That's not capitalism. That's not even socialism. That's crapitalism.
Right. I was a speaker at the Financial Terrorism Conference, and we'll be in London and Manchester. And during the conference, I came up with an excellent point, I thought, in terms of the bond holders of Anglo-Irish. The government is paying them off, even though it's an unsecured bond, an unsecured debit. I suggested pay in kind, in butter. Pay off the creditors in $1 billion or $2 billion worth of butter. Put the cows on overtime. You know, there should be huge billboards. It shouldn't say, keep stability, vote yes. It should be triple time Elsie, keep the teats working.
Well, I mean, that's a good point, because the Irish taxpayer is signing up to this fiscal treaty that they're not supposed to go into debt. The government debt has to be above a certain point. The only reason why their government is in debt is because of unelected officials at the ECB operating on behalf of Deutsche Bank and other European banks and Goldman Sachs were owed this money by Anglo-Irish. They took the bet, they took the risk that Anglo-Irish, who was paying a high yield on their debt, they were speculating that they would be able to pay back. They weren't, and they forced the Irish taxpayer. They said, the ECB said in January, when the Irish were protesting, paying a $1 billion payment on this unsecured bond, the ECB itself, the European Central Bank, said if you don't pay this, Irish taxpayers, a financial bomb will go off in your country.
How is that even allowed? That's the language of financial terrorism, coming out of unelected officials who are running this gulag casino state in countries like Ireland, and the people are rightfully revolting against it. They're just not revolting fast enough or hard enough.
Here's another unelected official. We could call her, the representative for Bank Paribas. It's payback time. Don't expect sympathy, Lagarde to Greeks. Now, this has been a widely covered story. The head of the IMF told the Greeks to take responsibility and stop trying to avoid taxes. This is what she told the Greek people when asked about their starving children who are, all the social services for the poor children are being cut off. She said, I don't feel bad for them. I feel worse for kids in Niger.
Look, the IMF officials don't pay taxes, right?
That's my next headline.
Yeah,
here,
I mean, that's part of the setup with the IMF. The people that they represent, like the Goldman Sachs of the world, that commit financial terrorism, they don't pay taxes.
What did Goldman Sachs pay last year, Max?
Less than 1%.
What did General Electric?
The big fat goose egg. They got a tax abatement. They got a credit. There are no taxes for them. You know, the Fortune 500 in America, very few of them pay any tax at all. So here you have Christine Lagarde, a front man for financial terrorism, browbeating the Greeks for not paying taxes.
AIG, which happened right here, the biggest bailout of them all, $87 billion that the American taxpayer transferred. They're not going to pay taxes for several decades due to their loss that they get to write off. The taxpayer themselves don't get to write off any losses.
Right, and here's the incredible thing about the AIG scandal. Is that you would have thought after AIG was caught selling securities that they counterfeited, that they would maybe outlawed that practice, selling what's it called, credit default swaps, naked, no collateral. Oh, wait! JP Morgan just got caught doing the exact same thing. Jamie Dimon just got caught doing the exact same thing, selling naked credit default swaps. They're picking up the fee. They're uncollateralized. He committed fraud just like AIG. How? Through London, the epicenter of fraud. Where's the Queen on that? On her freaking barge. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, London is the center of streakers. Maybe that's why all these naked credit default swaps originate here.
Well, I mean, how about selling forward that guy's ding-dong? I mean, it'd be worth more than the collateral of a naked credit default swap.
Well, let's talk about Christine Lagarde. Are tax-free IMF salaries inflated? The International Monetary Fund has long been considered a good place to work. Salaries are high and benefits are plentiful. Ask Christine Lagarde, who's getting a pay package worth about $550,000 in her new role as managing director. Lagarde's pay has drawn some scrutiny to the IMF perks, and not for the first time. Critics have complained for decades that the fund's employees and other counterparts at the World Bank are allowed to live large at taxpayer expense. In 1998, U.S. Representative Spencer Baucus, an Alabama Republican, objected to increasing funding for the IMF by reciting a list of perks given to the fund's employees. We are asking the U.S. taxpayer in this funding request to reimburse the employees of the IMF for income taxes, for private school costs, for tuition, and not only that, but for salaries higher than those paid by the U.S. government. So she's asking us, U.S. taxpayers, to pay for her children's school and her health care and all her other perks.
Right, it's a social welfare for Christine Lagarde, who's a financial rapist. Now, DSK, Dominic Strauss-Kahn, the predecessor, allegedly was a rapist in New York. He got off in more ways than one. But the institution itself, the IMF, undoubtedly is a financial rapist institution, and she represents the exact same thing.
Yeah, but again, where the theme is, of course, we need a BNP Paribas flag, not just the Queen's flag. We need a flag for JP Morgan. We need a flag for Bank Paribas. All these people, we're going to celebrate the Jubilee, the Diamond Jubilee of JP Morgan. And she's this unelected official who's able to go there and tell the Greek people, don't vote wrong in the next election. Then she goes to the Irish people, don't vote no. I know better than you because I was a finance minister. And she's also, by the way, for this Greek thing, when she's yelling at these Greek people, well, most of the Greek debts, those bonds, are owed to French banks.
All that flag waving seems to have hypnotized me. Stacey Herbert is my God. Stacey Herbert is my God. I need to snap out of it. Slap me really hard. Ouch.
Here's these unelected officials who are running the IMF telling everybody around the world now what to do. And they're talking about why they had to pay these people so much, why Christine Lagarde has to be paid $550,000. $90,000 of it, by the way, Max, $90,000 is for her living expenses, to cover her living expenses. And at the same time, she's telling the Greek people, shut up and just vote correctly. And I don't feel pity for you, you little slobs, you little peasants, for not being able to feed your children. Well, at the same time, she's telling the American taxpayer mostly, but also British taxpayers, to pay for her family and her living expenses and her travel expenses.
Yeah, I mean, the phrase used is payback. It's payback to the Greek people. And that's really disgusting from Christine Lagarde to use this type of phraseology in describing these people in Greece who are being financially raped. They're subjected to financial terrorism from Christine Lagarde and the IMF. They're dying. They're having their livelihoods and their country's assets stolen, stripped from them, from folks like the IMF. They're being left with absolutely nothing. And she needs to herself, I think, enjoy the wrath of the mob at some point to come in there and restore some justice, because her head is completely in the wrong place of her anatomy. She's not thinking clearly.
She's waving the flag for Bank Paribas, Credit Lyonnais, and Credit Agricole, who are owed money by the Greek government.
Right, it's exactly right. She is down there trying to get money paid back to BNP.
That's the payback, yeah.
That's the payback. But those debts that BNP floated were unsecured. Therefore, they took the risk. Now they've got to eat the loss. It's called capitalism, okay? If you make a bad bet, you pay for it. You then don't go crying to the government like a little whining, 7-year-old child. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Impose austerity measures because I can't make my yacht payment. Ah!
Well, let's turn to this final headline here, Max, because I think I found the source of this entire spiraling down of the pig nations now. We're in the second phase or third phase of the European debt crisis. Well, I think it had to do with the exit of Silvio Berlusconi. Yeah, sure, he was a sleazebag, but little did I know how important he was to the Italian economy. Silvio Berlusconi's 20 million euro pleasure chest went to party girls. Silvio Berlusconi's accountant brought 20 million euros in cash to the former premier's luxury villa to pay girls who attended his infamous bunga bunga parties, a court heard last week. His accountant said, he asked me to bring the money in cash and I would put it in the safe at the villa. In 2009, I brought around 7,665,000 euros, while in 2010, when it was needed most, when everybody else was inflicting austerity upon us, well, Silvio Berlusconi got very, very generous. He paid out more than 12 million euros. That's almost 33,000 euros per day for every single day of the year for these girls.
Price of bunga bunga is going up. I heard down in Cannes this year, bunga bunga prices were at sky-high rates. Bunga bunga, you gotta pay. You gotta pay.
Now listen to his accountant compared to how Christine Lagarde was referring to the Greek people. He said, whenever large sums were needed, the girls would come to him and ask him for it. I would forewarn the bank, and they would break it down into smaller amounts for me. The money was for the girls' daily living expenses, 33,000 euros a day, and for bills, that sort of thing. We helped so many people, and we still do. Some of these girls had come from overseas and had nothing. They all needed help.
That's a real trickle-down economy. Or as Berlusconi might say, golden shower. Stacey Herbert, thanks so much for being on the Kaiser Report.
Thank you.